From history, I'm Liam Geraghty, and this is Vikings.
I told you I could do it!
Huh? Now it's all up to you, Ragnar Lothbrok.
On today's show, we sit down with Vikings creator Michael Hirst.
The kind of body of work is done with me in a room talking like a mad person to these characters I've created.
And we descend upon Kattegat to speak with veteran Viking extras.
The Vikings come off the beach to attack us, but we knocked the hell out of them. And we weren't supposed to, if I remember rightly enough. That was stuntmen.
All on this week's episode of History's Vikings Podcast. Ragnar and Lagertha's journey throughout the past 4 seasons has been nothing short of epic. Everything from Ivar's birth to the siege on Paris to, well, Ragnar's death. Spoilers. The journey behind the scenes to create all of this has been just as epic as the show itself. So how did it all start? To answer that, we have to go way back, to the very beginning, to peer into the mind of the show's creator, Michael Hirst.
Everything I do, everything I write, starts life as something I've read as a fact, or at least according to historians, it's a fact. And so my own stories, my own characters are always anchored in some sort of reality. I personally don't believe that you can be historically accurate. The whole idea of historical accuracy is a misnomer. However, I want to be as authentic as a drama can be. And I want it, at a deeper level, to be as truthful as it can be. So I cull my characters from the historical record. I find out as much as I can find out about them. Of course, then I've got to send them on a journey. And that's me as a dramatist. That's me as a writer. I'm not doing a documentary. I have a duty to, particularly to the Americans who pay a lot of money for the drama, to make it entertaining. That's not a conflict for me. I never find myself, I'm never told to make things up, or if I am, I ignore that. So when I'm jotting down initial ideas and things, I find events that are recorded, like the Viking attack on Paris, which when I started, I had no idea about. 3,000 Vikings attacking Paris, which was Roman Paris, or remains of Roman Paris. And obviously I'm going to aim for that. That's in my locker, I know that that's coming. That's an exciting thing. So I can build that, I can seed that through. I know that Ragnar had more than one wife, and there's a lovely story about how his second wife seduced him. And so I've got these markers. So my saga, my story, moves between these markers that I know are authentic.
This authenticity was going to be put to the test. Before the first season was released, the History Channel showed the first few episodes to a Swedish professor of Scandinavian history at Harvard. Once he'd watched them, he was a guest on a radio program alongside Michael.
Honestly, I thought he was going to eat me alive. I mean, he's Scandinavian, it's his history. What he actually said was, this is the first time my culture has ever been taken seriously and intelligently. So it's a huge show across Scandinavia now, I think, because it is as authentic as you might expect a TV drama to be. And I went recently, last year, I have to confess that I hadn't really been to Scandinavia, probably a couple of quick visits. I certainly hadn't been to Norway. I rectified that last year and went on the fjords. And these are the places I've been writing about and thinking about. I'd seen pictures of them, but I hadn't actually been there. But I ended up in Oslo at the Viking Ship Museum, and the curator who gave me a private tour said, and I said, thank you very much for this. And he said, no, it's thank you. We have double the number of visitors to the museum now. We have the money now to build an extension to the museum. It's because of your show. It's reanimated the study and interest in Vikings in my country and in other Scandinavian countries, because before that the Vikings had belonged to the far right. And they still, the far right still use Viking slogans, which is very unfortunate. And I hope that the show is helping to the study of Vikings, because Vikings are not Nazis. I mean, that's the whole point, they're Democrats, they're really interesting people. Anyway, I'm wandering off the point, but that impact has been very pleasing.
A big obstacle Michael in the show had at the beginning was presenting a perspective on Vikings that we hadn't seen before in movies or TV. Michael didn't want to add to the canon of this stereotype of Vikings that we'd been fed in popular culture.
Many people, before we'd started, said it was impossible because Vikings have always been the other. They're the guys who come in the night, they break into your house, they rape your wife and daughters and steal your property. And it's not surprising we have that image because they didn't write anything down themselves, and what was written about them largely was written by their enemies, by Saxon monks. So it's not a surprise that they're regarded as devils. But in my research, I discovered more interesting things about them. Their attitude towards women was much more enlightened than most other Western cultures at the time, societies at the time. That women could divorce their husbands, they could rule, they fought with their husbands, they could own property, and that it was a very democratic culture.
I won't go unless we're all equal.
We are brothers. You and I will always be equal.
The most important thing, Michael says, was to find a lead character who the audience could empathise with.
They didn't need necessarily to like him, because if you think about the most successful recent TV shows, the lead character is usually a gangster or a drug addict or, a conflicted person. They have to be incredibly interesting, though, and they usually have to have the power of life and death over other people. In terms of Vikings, I wanted a different kind of Viking, because my idea was that Vikings were not necessarily brash, loud, hairy guys with dirty hippie types who just went around shouting Odin and were ignorant. Because I don't think Scandinavians are like that. Scandinavians, to me, are quiet, introverted, authentic people. So I wanted a Scandinavian Viking, not something invented by Saxon monks. And this character, Ragnar Lothbrok, to be fair, I think was first suggested or was on a list that my historical consultant gave me. These are possible. Read about them, think about them. Ragnar fitted the bill. I mean, for a start, we know more about him than probably most of the people on the list. He's also the first Viking that comes out of leader, who comes out of the mists of myth and legend. I'm convinced that he was a real person. In fact, I'm sure he was a real person. Most Scandinavians think he was. Nevertheless, he was an originator. He's the first one, and I was doing, the beginning of the Viking Age. So that fitted very well. The other thing that was very important was that I discovered that Ragnar believed that his family was descended from Odin. And Odin was not just the god of slain warriors and Valhalla. He was also the god of poetry and curiosity. He willingly sacrificed an eye to look into the well of knowledge. And I thought, wow, so his descendant, direct descendant, doesn't go or want to go traveling and exploring because he wants to rape and pillage. He's curious. He's a curious guy. And suddenly, what he has at his beck and call is a new boat.
Set the sail. Floki! The sail.
She'll sink.
No, she bloody won't.
I shouldn't have pretended to build such a boat.
The new prototype of the Viking boat, which was shallow drafted enough to travel both over oceans and up rivers, when most European cities, towns are built on rivers at the time or on the coast. Perfect vehicles to get there. So all these things fell into place. And so not only did I have, as it were, Ragnar, my chief, I had my boat builder as well. So Floki was born at the same time that Ragnar was born.
And now it runs on its cool keel. Oh, it's beautiful. Why didn't you believe me? I told you I could do it.
Huh? Now it's all up to you, Ragnar Lothbrok.
The production of Vikings is itself like Ragnar's boat, with the cast and crew rowing oars and Michael at the helm.
The only reason it really works that I can do it is because I love delegating. I love delegating, especially to people as talented as Mark and Susan, the head of costume, the head of design. I just think they're geniuses, and I learn from them, and they go and do their own research and come back, and I'm astonished usually about what they build and what they create. There are so many parts of this big machine that are run by very creative, very talented people. I don't want to be an autocrat. There are lots of showrunners who are autocratic. I know that. I've heard that. It tends to make life on set uneasy. It tends to foster rivalries. It doesn't produce particularly, I think, creative or friendly atmosphere. And I would prefer to work in a creative, not waste my time creating problems. And so I don't sit on set very much. I'm more useful writing. I'm around enough that people know I'm here. I meet, of course, all the actors. I talk to them, and when it's a big story arc for them, of course, I spend a lot of time with them. Over the years, I spent a lot of time with Travis, and I love it. I mean, I love collaborating. I love the time I spend with the directors. I spend a lot of time with the directors and with the cast. But as I say, my principal role has been actually writing and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. I'm not pretending it hasn't been challenging, especially when we went to 20 episode seasons. I mean, that is a challenge, and took us, it takes 9 months to shoot those under fairly sustained pressure. Everyone's under, the crew no less than me, especially when we're shooting over the winter here in Ireland. I mean, it may not snow very much, but it gets rainy and unpleasant and cold. Not for me, because I'm sitting in a warm office. But anyway, that's how it works. Although this is my show, I don't feel that way, really. It's collective. It's all our shows. Everyone puts in 110%. So,
With 4 seasons down, a 5th about to drop, and a 6th currently filming, that is a lot of episodes for Michael to write.
I have my place at home in near Oxford as a sort of, it's not exactly a shed, but it's it's an office in the garden. And if I'm writing whole episodes, so I need to be away from the action. I do need familiar space and familiar routines, so the day always begins with walking my dog for a couple of miles, and while I'm doing that, I'm thinking about the script and the scenes and the characters, and so when I get to sit down, I'm ready to go, and I work all day and most of the evening too, and that, everyone at home, my kids and everything, have had to live with that. At least I'm there, they can see me, but I do, there's no other way of doing it, actually. When I'm here, I can do some rewrites, I can address people's immediate concerns, I can have meetings with actors, with directors, I can go on locations and see what they're building and feel part of it, which is very important. But the kind of body of work is done with me in a room talking like a mad person to these characters I've created. The difficulties come from the fact that we try to keep it real. It's as real as we can make it, in the sense that we use visual effects, but we don't use them like Game of Thrones. So, we don't have dragons. That everything is as real as we can make it. So even if we add visual effects, it all starts with something real. And the cast love doing real things. I mean, they sail, they fight. That's always been encouraged, but it means that there's set challenges, and the production set immense challenges. For example, I discovered in my reading that if the Viking ships were blocked from going upriver by defence works or something, they would partially dismantle the boats and carry them over the mountains, set them down the river on the other side. I mean, these boats are made of oak. So I went to production. I said, I know we can't do this, but that's what the Vikings did. I wonder if we can approximate it. And they said, well, leave it with us. And like 6 weeks later, I was up in the mountains here watching a Viking boat being hauled up a cliff face. We recreated the actual technology that they used to do it. All we had was a modern contemporary heavy-duty crane on the top of the cliff stabilizing the boat. But actually the boat was hauled up with pulleys and ropes that the Vikings would have used, with many of our cast doing it, and Floki standing on this boat.
Michael says they've had their fair share of difficulties too, though, like the time they tried to film a Spanish market scene outdoors in Irish weather.
And it was winter, and of course it rained, and the wind was terrible, and it blew it down, and it was quite an elaborate set. I mean, we felt, in fact, it's a sort of running joke here that whenever I say, we're going to another world now, we're going to France or we're going to the Mediterranean, I'm told, well, there are parts of Ireland that look like Tunisia, or really, really. And so we've been able to create, I mean, there's a varied, very varied landscape here, and we've got a wonderful resource. But, last season, the story was set, or a big part of the story was set in Iceland, and another big part of the story was set around the Mediterranean. And I said, we can't do Morocco, even in the west of Ireland. Really, it's not possible. And we have to go to Iceland. I insist we go to Iceland, and thank goodness, and we did. And you needed it. I mean, the color palette is so extraordinary, so different, and we had our Vikings on camels. It was brilliant. In season 1, there was a scene which I knew to be real. It was based on absolute. In the early days of the Viking raids, a Viking boat came ashore in England, and the local reeve or sheriff came down to the beach, Saxon sheriff, with his men, to find out what they were there for. It was just a single boat. What I discovered was before the raids, there'd been some trading between the Saxons and Vikings. So he was coming down to find out if this boat was full of traders, whatever they were. So this was good for me because I wanted to hear them both speak their different languages. So create already tension that they didn't understand each other. Okay. And what I knew was that encounter, historically speaking, in real life, ended with the butchery of that reeve and his party. So symbolically, it was a hugely important scene. And we have great action people, guys who choreograph the fights. They're just amazing. So they'd choreographed a fight sequence when the negotiations kind of broke down and mutual suspicion and everything, and the Vikings thought, we better do something about that. And Johan and I were just looking at this setup. It was down on the beach somewhere around here, and it was brilliant because the waves were crashing in and it looked incredible. And this fight sequence was going to last quite a while. And I think it was our first real fight sequence. And then, we were just chatting about it, and we sort of said, the Vikings, all they've got is one boat. They've got about 30 warriors. They can't afford to lose anyone, or they don't want people to get wounded. I mean, that's all they've got. And they know that behind the Shreve are hundreds, possibly thousands of warriors, and they've just got themselves. They've got this limited fund of people. So are they really going to do sword play and things? No, they're not. They're going to try and get it over with. Once they say go, they're going to get it over with as quickly as they can. Now, we know that Vikings had a reputation as fighters. They became the bodyguards of the Holy Roman Emperor because of their reputation as fearsome warriors. They were the only ones still using axes at this period in time. So when Ragnar gave the signal, when everything had broken down, the Vikings just took out their weapons and slaughtered them all. They're just within seconds. Every Viking standing next. So the Saxons are drawing their swords, trying to get in formation. The Vikings just killed them. And that was an amazing thing. And I thought that's a template Now we know something about Vikings. Now we know how we might be shooting this, that we can push the envelope. We don't have to do sword play and all that. So that was brilliant.
In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Pater Noster qui es in celis. Pater Noster.
There were wonderful scenes with Athelstan, the young monk that was captured who was captured in the raid on Lindisfarne. To begin with, Athelstan was just my method of getting a contemporary audience into a pagan world, because he was a Christian. One assumed that the audience, a lot of the audience, the American audience, would have empathy with him, and he would take them into, and then he would disappear. I had no. But when he got there, because Ragnar's a curious guy, Ragnar started wanting to talk to him, find out about, why were these unprotected places in England filled with treasure? What was that about?
I don't understand. Why would they leave such treasures unprotected? Is there some spell or some magic which protects them?
So Athelstan then became a character that I was interested in, and Ragnar was in. We were both interested in. And then he became a real person to me. And that's what happens in my sort of process.
You speak our language. How do you speak our language?
I've travelled. We are told to travel to take the word of God. Please, don't kill me.
So there were a number of times when talks between Ragnar and Athelstan were absolutely amazing. And when he taught him the Lord's Prayer was absolutely fantastic. And then obviously when he was blinded by the light and became a Christian, finally before his death and Floki killing him. Those kind of intimate moments I like.
Before season 1 launched, Michael remembers a question the History Channel asked him.
Just out of interest, Michael, how would you promote this? How would you advertise the show? I said, I would get some huge billboards, put them along Sunset Boulevard, just with the word Vikings on them. And I think because it's a word that travels, everyone knows what it means, and it brings immediately to mind a lot of cliches, a lot of images, a lot of cliches, but it does bring something. And of course, Vikings is now one of the biggest shows in the world, and the Vikings went most places in the world.
That was Vikings creator Michael Hirst, and Michael will be joining us throughout the whole podcast series with insights into everything from writing the Vikings comic books to killing off his darling, Ragnar. Do not miss it.
This is the road into Kattegat, which is the start of all on Vikings. This is our lake here.
The lifeblood of the Vikings cast are the extras. Gino Kavanagh from Waterford, Ireland, is giving me the tour of Kattegat. He's been with Vikings since season 1, but he wasn't always a TV extra.
I was a postman, mailman to American listeners for 27 years. And I got sciatica and had to finish up that, and was at an end where I couldn't do anything, couldn't go onto a building site and work or anything, and I was reading an advertisement in the paper and they were looking for extras. So I said, well, I've always had long hair and always had a beard, so I said, I'll try, I'll have a go. And next minute, bang, got it, and since then that was it,
Gino loves working on Vikings. He's filming season 6 right now. In fact, listen closely and you'll hear some exclusive season 6 shouting in the background.
I think the best thing about it all is, look, we're all here for a bit of fun, really. It's great, but great. Now, when the camera starts rolling, we're all serious and we do what we have to do. But it's a great bit of fun, a great camaraderie, And as you can see here yourself here today, it's like a mini Woodstock, isn't it?
My name's Paul Parr. I'm originally from Australia, living in Wexford. When you come back here, this is our first day back since the beginning of the year, and it's like coming back home. You get to chat up with everyone and find out what they've been up to, and you get back into the groove of the thing again. Simple as that.
Some of the other extras have tipped me off to ask Paul about his on-set experience with an emu.
Oh, not the emu.
Oh, now I definitely need to hear about the emu.
Eddie Drew here, who does all the animals, had a load of animals here one day, and of course, me being Australian, he had an emu, and he put the two of us together, and Stop laughing, you. It was quite a good scene. It was very funny, actually. That was one of them, yeah. Another one we did in season 2. Myself, Gino, and another friend of ours did a battle. The Vikings come off the beach to attack us, and we had to not fight them, but we knocked the hell out of them. And we weren't supposed to, if I remember rightly enough. They were stuntmen, so they had to go back and keep out of our way. But I mean, every time you come here, you know what you're going to do. It just depends if you fit the part and they're looking for you. In you go. But we always volunteer for a bit of blood and guts, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Always ready for it. And I mean, we're the old ones here, and we seem to keep going longer than the young ones.
Oh, hey, Raymond, good to see you, sir. How are you? Thanks for coming in.
Daniel Lloyd is the assistant extras coordinator. He says they do a lot of open casting. And fair warning, he might be a little tough to understand if you aren't, Irish.
Because there's so many people, we can't really go, we can't talk to them for too long. So what I like to do is I like to stare at them in the corner. And then when I go through the files, or myself or Stephen or Dennis will go through the files, we'll see them and we go, pull them out. He's very good. He'll love it. So that's the type of thing. Well, in fairness, when we get those things, we'll draw it and they go, he'd be good for blah, blah, blah. He'd be good for this.
So as I was coming in and seeing a lot of people in costume coming out of the loo, is it difficult to go to the loo in a Viking costume?
Well, it just depends, It depends. I think the shield men outfits are a bit more difficult. They have kind of belts and stuff. But actually, most of them are pretty simple, especially for men. Obviously, men are just... They don't have a fly, I don't think. I don't think the costume department will flies in the pants or anything.
You couldn't be an assistant extras coordinator without being an extra yourself for at least one episode. So Daniels?
Episode 4, season 4. It was nominated for an Emmy.
Anything got to do with you?
Maybe. I was called Jarl, the name of the episode, and it was Ragnar and Aslog and the kids. They were doing a sacrifice to the gods for Christmas. It was like a Christmas Jarl Viking period, and there was a raven man in it. So it's basically a dancing bird.
That's a dancing bird, in case you didn't catch that.
So it's basically a dancing bird who was in front of Ragnar going down a hill, group of extras behind them, all with flambeaus, we call them. But
flambeaus, also known as torches.
Flambeaus in their hands, walking down this long hill, and I'm in this bird outfit with a bird helmet on, waving like a madman. I think Helen Schaefer was our director that episode. She was giving me some notes about how to glide exactly like a bird, which I think I took all right. We did that scene, but they were all with flambeaus. Obviously, all their costumes were sprayed with fire protective stuff, bar my costume. And I'm the one who I can't see how this board helmet at all. Like, it's basically just keeps flying down. I have all the cast and 200 odd extras behind me, and I'm leading them down this snowy white hill, going side to side, gliding as much as I can as a bird. So that was a fun day.
My name is Eamon O'Keefe. Nickname is Herbie, and I'm from Thomastown, County Kilkenny in Ireland.
Eamon had no experience in extra work before Vikings, but a friend of his said he should go, so he did.
Got the job, and I ended up right beside Gabriel Byrne. We're one of his clique, as they called it. So there was about 7 of us, so I was thrown in at the deep end, basically. It was wonderful working with him and Jessica Gilsig.
It's not all glamour, though.
There's a lot of waiting. You really need to have patience, and I have a lot of patience, but you develop it as well. From being here, it gets a bit untidy at times, if it's pouring rain and you're out in the open and, you get your poncho and you're standing there and there's muck and... But generally, it doesn't matter because we all turn into children here. I reckon at about 3:30 every day, everyone goes a little bit crazy, and get really turn strange. But it's just a wonderful place to work.
If you'd like to know more about Vikings Extras, they have their own Facebook page. It has close to 80,000 likes and is filled with posts looking for, quote, male Asian magicians, or, quote, older females urgently with long hair. It's kind of hilarious and you should follow it. Just search for Vikings Extras on Facebook. Well, that's about our lot for this episode, but we'll be back next week and every single week until Season 5 hits your screens on November 29th on History. Also, if you like Vikings, check out History's new drama series Nightfall. When the legendary Brotherhood, the Knights Templar, lose the Holy Land, they must seek redemption by finding the Holy Grail. Nightfall premieres December 6th at 10/9 Central. I've been your host, Liam Geraghty, and you can follow me on Twitter at Liam_Geraghty. That's GERAGHTY. Irish names. And if you enjoyed the show, why not show us some love and rate and review us on iTunes? It's what Ragnar would do. See you next week.